A toddler disappeared during a family picnic, but 12 years later, the mother recognizes a strange birthmark on her neighbor's adopted child and is shocked by the discovery. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go! The pastel-colored kitchen of the Miller home was bathed in morning sunlight as Jennifer carefully arranged the lattice top of her famous apple pie. Sarah, her golden curls bouncing as she moved, sat cross-legged on the floor, stacking colorful blocks with focused determination. The 3-year-old's blue floral dress was already smudged with the evidence of a busy morning. "Higher, higher!" Sarah giggled as her tower grew precariously tall. Her tiny fingers worked with surprising precision until the inevitable collapse sent blocks scattering across the oak floor. "Oops! Broke it, Mommy?" Jennifer smiled, sliding the pie into the oven. "That's okay, sweetie. You can always build another one." Outside in the driveway, Robert checked his handwritten list for the 3rd time, methodically loading coolers into the family's SUV. The July heat was already intense, promising the scorching day the forecast had predicted. He wiped sweat from his brow as Jennifer appeared in the doorway, Sarah's straw hat with embroidered butterflies in hand. "Final check before we leave?" Jennifer asked, adjusting the hat on their daughter's head. "I packed extra sunscreen, bug spray, and Sarah's water shoes. Got the tables reserved, packed the grill supplies, and double-checked the coolers," Robert replied, his accountant's precision evident in every prepared detail. "Fort Snelling will be packed today, but our usual spot should be waiting." The family arrived at the park shortly after noon, joining the steady stream of visitors already filling the popular recreation area. Robert efficiently unloaded their supplies while Jennifer greeted familiar faces, her annual summer picnic having become something of a community tradition over the years. "Jennifer, everything looks amazing as usual," called Diane Peterson, helping her 7-year-old daughter Amy spread a blanket nearby. "You've outdone yourself again." Sarah quickly broke free from her mother's grip, darting across the open grass toward a group of children she recognized from church and the neighborhood. "Look, look," she announced, proudly extending her right wrist to show a heart-shaped birthmark. "My special mark. Mommy says it's 'cause I'm extra loved." By mid-afternoon, the picnic was in full swing. Jennifer had organized relay races for the children, who laughed and tumbled across the grass with boundless energy. Robert captured the moments on his camera, paying special attention to Sarah as she participated in an improvised sack race, her face flushed with excitement when she crossed the finish line first. "I won, Daddy! I won!" she exclaimed, jumping up and down, arms raised victoriously above her head. "You sure did, Princess." Robert laughed, kneeling to her level for a congratulatory hug. "You're getting so fast." As the afternoon progressed, the temperature continued to climb. At 4:30, Sarah tugged insistently at Jennifer's floral dress, pointing toward the playground approximately 50 yards away, where several children were already climbing and swinging. "Mommy, can I go on the swings with Amy?" she asked, blue eyes wide with anticipation. "Please, please." Jennifer glanced toward the playground, noting several parents were already stationed around its perimeter, keeping watchful eyes on the children. "All right, but stay with Amy the whole time," she cautioned, adjusting Sarah's butterfly hat. "And if it starts raining, come running back right away, okay?" "Promise." Sarah nodded solemnly before breaking into a smile and reaching for Amy's hand. Jennifer watched as the two girls raced toward the playground, Sarah's blonde curls bouncing beneath her straw hat. While arranging the dessert table, Jennifer periodically looked up to confirm Sarah was still playing safely. Robert had joined a group of men playing frisbee in the open field between their picnic area and the playground, occasionally waving to Sarah when she called out to him from the swings. At 4:45, the first raindrops began to fall. Jennifer quickly covered the desserts with plastic wrap, then raised her eyes to the playground, expecting to see Sarah running back as instructed. Instead, she saw Amy returning alone and felt the first tightening in her chest. "Amy, where's Sarah?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice calm. She went to pee in the bushes with Beth, Amy replied matter-of-factly, pointing toward an area near the beginning of the forest trail. Jennifer walked quickly toward the bushes, calling her daughter's name. Beth, a 5-year-old with pigtails, emerged alone, looking confused. "Sarah? She wasn't with me, Mrs. Miller. I went by myself," the child explained, glancing around uncertainly. "Sarah!" Jennifer called louder, her voice carrying across the rapidly emptying playground as the rain increased. Robert, noticing the commotion, abandoned his game and jogged toward his wife. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etching across his features. "I can't find Sarah. She was supposed to be at the playground, but nobody's seen her in the last few minutes." The next 20 minutes unfolded in a blur of frantic searching. Every adult from the picnic mobilized, forming search parties to check the playground, bathrooms, picnic area, and edges of the forest. The rain, which had started as a drizzle, intensified into a downpour, complicating the search and washing away any possible tracks. At 5:17, Robert called 911 with trembling hands, his voice breaking as he described their daughter. "My 3-year-old daughter is missing at Fort Snelling State Park. Yes, we've looked everywhere. No, she's never wandered off before. Blonde curly hair, wearing a blue dress with white flowers and a straw hat. Yes, she has a heart-shaped birthmark on her right wrist." The first police officers arrived 17 minutes later, followed by park rangers. Sergeant Michael Donovan, a robust man with a commanding presence, took charge while the storm raged around them. "We need precise information," Donovan explained to the distraught couple. "Who was the last person to see Sarah besides yourselves?" As darkness fell, flashlights cut through the gloom of the park. Search dogs arrived around 7:30, but the heavy rain had compromised scents. Minnesota Department of Natural Resources mobilized additional rangers to check trails and remote areas. Jennifer remained in the Improvisational Command Center, a tent erected by police, obsessively scrolling through recent photos of Sarah on her phone. Robert alternated between coordinating with volunteers and comforting his wife. "She must be scared of the storm," Jennifer whispered, her eyes red and swollen. "She's always been afraid of thunder." As the search continued into the night with no sign of Sarah, a park ranger approached Sergeant Donovan with a disturbing discovery. A small straw hat with embroidered butterflies had been found soaked and trampled near the east parking lot, where security cameras had inexplicably failed that afternoon. Sergeant Donovan clutched the soggy straw hat with embroidered butterflies, his expression darkening as he informed his team about the security camera failure. Jennifer reached for the hat with trembling hands, tears mixing with raindrops on her face. "This is hers," she whispered, fingers tracing one of the butterflies. "She was wearing it when—" Her voice broke as Robert wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The command center buzzed with renewed urgency as Donovan mapped out search quadrants for the eastern parking area. "We'll need additional officers here and here," he directed, circling locations on the laminated park map. "And get IT working on those cameras. I want to know if this was a technical failure or something else." Dawn painted the sky in muted pinks and grays as Monday's first light crept over Fort Snelling State Park. In the command tent, Jennifer startled awake from a fitful sleep, her neck stiff from the awkward angle in the metal folding chair. The nightmare still clung to her consciousness, Sarah crying out for her, the sound seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Here." An officer handed her a steaming cup of coffee. "It's going to be a long day." Outside, Robert was already organizing the day's first wave of volunteers who had arrived with thermoses and boxes of pastries. Despite his rumpled clothes and the dark circles under his eyes, he maintained a focused calm as he distributed maps where areas already searched were marked in red. "We've covered approximately 60% of the park's accessible areas," he explained to a group of church members who had taken the day off work. "Today we focus on these eastern sectors and denser wooded regions." Sergeant Donovan called the Millers into a more private corner of the command tent for a situation briefing. His face showed the strain of the all-night operation, but his voice remained steady and authoritative. "The first 48 hours are critical in missing children cases," he explained. We're pulling in officers from 3 neighboring counties, and the FBI has assigned Special Agent Rivera to supervise the investigation. He gestured to a composed woman in her 40s who approached with purposeful strides. Agent Rivera nodded curtly, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. "I've been reviewing the evidence collected overnight," she said, lifting the plastic evidence bag containing Sarah's hat. "We'll be checking for DNA traces that might indicate contact with someone besides Sarah." The systematic nature of the investigation continued to unfold throughout the morning. In a child-friendly interrogation room decorated with colorful drawings, Amy Peterson sat nervously as a specialized child psychologist gently worked to clarify her earlier statements. "Amy, are you absolutely sure you saw Sarah go with Beth?" the psychologist asked, her voice gentle but persistent. "Did you actually see them walk away together?" The girl twirled her hair anxiously. "I think so. Maybe. Sarah said she needed to go potty and Beth was going too." By mid-morning, divers in black wetsuits slipped into the park's lake, methodically searching the murky waters, while Jennifer watched from the shore, her hands clasped in silent prayer. Robert stood slightly apart, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke with his employer, explaining the emergency. At the east parking lot, a forensic team worked in the drizzling rain, examining the area where Sarah's hat had been found. A technician called over the lead investigator, pointing to what appeared to be deliberately cut cables behind the security camera housing. "This wasn't a malfunction," the technician stated. "Someone knew what they were doing." The revelation sent a chill through the command center, shifting the focus of the investigation. What had been treated primarily as a search for a lost child now carried the darker possibility of deliberate abduction. At 1:45 p.m., Robert stood before a hastily assembled group of reporters, rain-splattered microphones thrust toward his face. With reddened eyes but a steady voice, he read from a prepared statement. "Our daughter Sarah is only 3 years old. She's wearing a blue dress with white flowers. She has blonde curly hair and blue eyes. She's just a little girl who wants to come home. Please, if you've seen her, or have any information, contact the police immediately." While media attention intensified, Jennifer found herself sitting alone on a rain-dampened park bench, staring blankly at the playground now cordoned off with yellow police tape. A middle-aged woman she didn't recognize approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," the woman said softly. "I don't know if this helps, but yesterday I saw a little girl who looked like your daughter getting into a blue car. I wasn't sure at first, but after seeing the news..." Jennifer's heart raced as she practically dragged the woman to Agent Rivera. The agent ushered the potential witness to a quiet corner, carefully noting details about the possible blue vehicle, while Jennifer watched anxiously through the glass partition, clinging to this new thread of hope. As the day stretched into evening, the emotional toll became increasingly visible. Robert sat alone in their parked SUV, a private moment of breakdown after a tense call with his bank about missed mortgage payments. He pounded the steering wheel in frustration, finally allowing tears to flow freely after maintaining composure for so many hours. By early evening, exhaustion forced the Millers to briefly return home for clean clothes and additional photos of Sarah. They stood frozen in the hallway, outside their daughter's bedroom, neither able to cross the threshold into the painfully empty space. Through the partially open door, Jennifer could see Sarah's favorite teddy bear, Mr. Hugs, sitting on her unmade bed. The absent sound of her daughter's laughter echoed deafeningly in the silence of their home. Back at the command center, illuminated panels displayed Sarah's photos, a detailed timeline, and search maps under harsh fluorescent lights. As midnight approached and the search teams rotated, Jennifer and Robert found themselves in a whispered disagreement in a corner of the tent. "Someone took her, Robert," Jennifer insisted, her voice low but intense. "She wouldn't just wander away like that. Not our Sarah." "We can't jump to worst-case scenarios yet," Robert countered, rubbing his temples. "Children get lost in big parks. The search teams are still working. We have to hold on to hope. On the morning of the third day, as fatigue weighed heavily on everyone involved, Agent Rivera called the couple into a private room. She placed a red folder on the table between them, with deliberate care. "We found something concerning in the park's employee records," she said, opening the folder. "One of the security guards working last Sunday has a history of crimes against children in another state, and he didn't show up for his shift today." Gregory Walters, handcuffed and looking bewildered, was led out of his modest suburban home by tactical officers, while forensic technicians streamed inside. From the police cruiser, Jennifer watched the scene unfold, her fingers unconsciously clutching the small locket with Sarah's photo that she'd begun wearing around her neck. Robert sat beside her, rigid with tension, eyes never leaving Walters as the man was placed in a separate vehicle. "They found something," Jennifer whispered, hope creeping into her voice for the first time in days. "They must have found something to move this quickly." Robert squeezed her hand but remained silent, unwilling to nurture false hope after 3 days of crushing disappointment. At the county sheriff's office, Walters sat in a sterile interrogation room, nervously running his hands through his thinning hair. Despite his obvious anxiety, his cooperation surprised the investigators. "Yes, I have a record," he admitted, looking directly at Agent Rivera. "I served my time for what happened in Ohio. But I wasn't anywhere near that little girl on Sunday. I was patrolling the western trails all afternoon. Check the radio logs, ask Supervisor Gaines. He'll confirm it." While the interrogation continued, the forensic team methodically processed Walter's home. Every drawer was emptied, every closet searched. After hours of careful examination, the lead technician called Donovan with a preliminary report. "No sign of the girl, sir. No clothing fibers matching her description. No toys, nothing suspicious at all. Just some old photographs of his daughter from his previous marriage." In the precinct hallway, Jennifer overheard fragments of conversation between Rivera and Donovan as they conferred in hushed tones. The words cut through her like shards of glass. "His GPS confirms his location. 3 witnesses corroborate. No connection to the case." By late afternoon, Agent Rivera gathered the Millers in a small conference room, her expression solemn. "I'm sorry, but Walters isn't involved. His alibi is solid. Radio logs confirm he was on the western side of the park when Sarah disappeared. Multiple witnesses saw him there, and we've found nothing in his residence linking him to any recent criminal activity." Jennifer's brief spark of hope extinguished, leaving her hollowed out. "Then we're back to nothing," she said flatly. "Not nothing," Rivera corrected. "We're following several leads, including the blue car sighting. We're reviewing traffic camera footage from all roads leaving the park area." 1 week after Sarah's disappearance, volunteers began dismantling the command post at Fort Snelling. Jennifer stood at the perimeter, watching silently as maps were taken down and equipment packed away. A gentle rain fell, mirroring the tears she no longer had the energy to shed. That evening, under the harsh studio lights of a national news program, Jennifer and Robert appeared with freshly applied makeup that couldn't conceal their exhaustion. The interviewer leaned forward with practiced sympathy. "What would you like to say to anyone who might have seen Sarah?" "Please," Jennifer's voice cracked. "If you've seen our daughter, contact the police. She's just 3 years old. She needs to come home. She has a distinctive heart-shaped birthmark on her right wrist." The parade of interviews continued across multiple networks, each one draining what little emotional reserves the couple had left. Between tapings, they hardly spoke, the weight of their shared grief creating a chasm between them. Back home, Jennifer transformed their once tidy living room into an investigation hub. She meticulously pinned Sarah's photos, maps of the park, newspaper clippings, and notes about possible leads on a large corkboard that consumed an entire wall. She worked through the night, fueled by coffee and desperation, searching for patterns that professionals might have missed. Across the house in his home office, Robert took a different approach, methodically reviewing bank statements and phone records late into the night, looking for any anomalies that might provide a clue, unusual withdrawals, unfamiliar numbers, anything out of the ordinary pattern of their lives. "We need to hire a private investigator," Jennifer demanded during a tense early morning confrontation in the kitchen. "The police are giving up. I can feel it." Robert rubbed his bloodshot eyes. "They're following protocol, Jen. They haven't given up, and we can't spend all our savings now. We might need those resources later if..." "If what?" she challenged. "If this drags on, that's exactly why we need someone focused solely on finding her." Their arguments, once rare, now erupted with increasing frequency, usually in the pre-dawn hours when exhaustion stripped away their emotional defenses. The phone calls came at all hours, sometimes from well-meaning people, sometimes from attention seekers, occasionally from those genuinely believing they'd seen Sarah. Each call initially sparked hope, followed by crushing disappointment. "Yes, blonde, 3 years old." Jennifer answered at 4:30 a.m., voice automatically shifting to alert despite having been asleep moments before. As the caller described a child spotted in South Dakota, her face fell. "No, Sarah has a birthmark on her right wrist, not her neck. But thank you for calling." The community's support, initially overwhelming, gradually shifted to awkward sympathy. At the local pharmacy, Jennifer noticed people whispering as she waited for her prescription. The cashier avoided eye contact while handing over the antidepressants her doctor had recently prescribed. After particularly difficult days, Robert often found Jennifer asleep in Sarah's room, surrounded by the child's clothes and toys, clutching Mr. Hugs to her face as if trying to inhale some lingering essence of their daughter. On these nights, he would gently carry her to their bed, then return to sit in Sarah's room alone, allowing himself the private grief he kept hidden during daylight hours. 1 month after the disappearance, when media interest had begun to wane and the investigation showed signs of cooling, Jennifer received an unmarked envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photograph, a small girl with her back to the camera in an unfamiliar playground, wearing a red coat remarkably similar to Sarah's, and most disturbingly, a partial glimpse of what appeared to be a heart-shaped mark on the wrist, visible where the sleeve had ridden up. The photograph trembled in Jennifer's hands as she stared at the partial glimpse of the heart-shaped mark. Her breath caught in her throat. After weeks of false leads and disappointments, could this grainy image actually be Sarah? She carefully placed the unmarked envelope and photo in a plastic evidence bag, already dialing Agent Rivera's number with shaking fingers. 6 months after Sarah's disappearance, January's bitter Minnesota winter had transformed Maple Grove into a frozen landscape that matched the cold emptiness permeating the Miller home. Jennifer stood before the now massive investigation board dominating the living room wall, the anonymous photo enlarged and centered, with red circles marking details of the playground equipment visible in the background. "I've identified 3 possible locations with this particular jungle gym design," she murmured to herself, adding pins to the map beside the photo collage. The once tidy living room had become command central, with case files, maps, and notebooks covering every surface. In the kitchen, Robert silently prepared his morning coffee, his gaze lingering on Sarah's Princess in Training mug, still sitting in the dish rack. He couldn't bring himself to put it away in the cupboard, nor could he use it. Like so many things in their home, it remained frozen in time, waiting for its owner's return. The clock on the microwave blinked 8:10 a.m. as Robert leaned down to kiss Jennifer's forehead before leaving for work. She barely acknowledged him with a distracted nod, already deep in cross-referencing playground designs with municipal records. "I'll try to be home early," he said, receiving no response as he closed the front door behind him. Later that afternoon, Jennifer sat across from Agent Rivera in a sterile conference room at the FBI field office, frustration evident in both women's expressions. "We've analyzed the photograph extensively," Rivera explained, sliding an enhanced image across the table. "The quality is too poor to confirm identity, and even the mark could be a shadow or dirt smudge. The photo was printed on commonly available paper from a chain store printer, which makes tracking nearly impossible." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "But you're still looking into the playgrounds I identified." "We are," Rivera confirmed, her tone softening slightly. "But I need to manage your expectations. Without more to go on, we're spreading resources very thin." By 2:30 p.m., Jennifer was climbing the steps of Maple Grove City Hall, a thick folder of documents clutched to her chest. Her face, thinner now and marked with fine lines that hadn't been there 6 months ago, set in determination as she pushed through the glass doors to the administrative offices. "I'd like to file paperwork to register a non-profit organization," she informed the clerk at the window, laying out meticulously prepared forms for Sarah's Heart Foundation. Across town at the Minnesota State Bank, Robert struggled to focus on the quarterly audit reports on his screen. He could feel the sympathetic glances from colleagues, their conversations halting whenever he entered the break room. His supervisor had called him in earlier that morning. "Your work has been slipping, Bob," the man had said with awkward compassion. "Your mind is clearly elsewhere, which is understandable, but perhaps you should consider reducing your hours temporarily." Robert had nodded woodenly, knowing their savings were already strained by the investigation costs. Reduction in hours wasn't an option he could afford. That evening, Jennifer sat in a circle of metal folding chairs in the community center basement, surrounded by faces that reflected her own pain. The support group for families of missing children had become her only social outlet, the only place where she didn't have to explain the dark circles under her eyes or her sudden moments of distraction. "The hardest part," a woman named Donna was saying, "is when people start talking about moving on or finding closure. My son has been missing for 3 years, and I still can't bear to change anything in his room." Murmurs of understanding rippled through the circle as Jennifer nodded, for once feeling truly seen. When Robert arrived home at 9:45 p.m., he was startled to find the living room filled with strangers, 3 women and 2 men huddled around laptops and stacks of papers. Jennifer moved between them with more animation than he'd seen in months, directing their activities with focused energy. "These are volunteers from the foundation," she explained quickly. "We're coordinating distribution of updated flyers across Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas, focusing on areas with playgrounds matching the one in the photo." Later, after the volunteers had left, Jennifer proudly showed Robert the newly launched Sarah's Heart website on her laptop. "We already have volunteer coordinators in 3 states, she explained, scrolling through pages of information, "and we're creating a database of playgrounds with similar equipment to cross-reference with reported sightings." While Jennifer continued detailing her plans, Robert discreetly checked their bank account on his phone, his concern deepening at the dwindling figures. The costs of printing, website hosting, and foundation setup were mounting rapidly, but seeing the first spark of purpose in his wife's eyes in months, he couldn't bring himself to voice his concerns. The following week, sitting in their therapist's office, the question hung heavy in the air between them. "Have you discussed what life might look like if Sarah isn't found?" The silence that followed was deafening, neither willing to acknowledge the possibility aloud. That night, alone in their bedroom while Jennifer's voice carried from the living room as she pursued yet another lead by phone, Robert twisted his wedding band thoughtfully around his finger. For a brief moment, he considered removing it, the weight of it suddenly foreign against his skin. The tension finally erupted at 11:35 p.m. in the kitchen, when Robert, exhausted from working overtime, questioned the foundation's focus on the anonymous photograph. 3 different experts said that Mark might not be anything, Jen, he exclaimed, frustration boiling over. "You're chasing ghosts." Jennifer's eyes flashed with fury, "And you've given up on her." That night marked the 3rd consecutive night Jennifer slept on the sofa, surrounded by papers and her laptop open to a forum for families of missing children. Robert lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how their marriage had become another casualty of Sarah's disappearance. After their most heated argument yet, with Jennifer accusing Robert of moving on as if Sarah never existed, he pulled a crumpled letter from his pocket and handed it to her with trembling hands. "I received a job offer in Chicago. Maybe we need a fresh start, away from the memories and ghosts that are destroying what's left of us." Jennifer stared at the job offer letter, her fingers tightening around the crisp paper as its implications sank in. Chicago, 300 miles away from where Sarah had disappeared, 300 miles from where their daughter might still be. "This is your solution?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "To abandon her?" Robert's face crumpled. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm trying to save what's left of our family, of us." The job offer became another fault line in their already fractured relationship. Over the following weeks, their home became a silent battleground, conversations reduced to necessities and discussions about Sarah. By spring, Robert had accepted the position, renting a small apartment in Chicago while maintaining their Minnesota home, where Jennifer refused to leave. "I won't be far," he promised as he loaded the last box into his car. "I'll come back every other weekend, and the foundation will have more financial stability with this salary." Jennifer nodded stiffly, arms crossed as if physically holding herself together. "Sarah needs to know we're both still looking for her when she comes home." On July 17, 2013, the second anniversary of Sarah's disappearance, Jennifer stood alone at Fort Snelling Park, holding a small cake with a number 5 candle. The exact spot where Sarah was last seen had become a place of pilgrimage, now marked by a small memorial bench donated by community members. Volunteers from Sarah's Heart Foundation maintained a respectful distance as she conducted her private ritual. Robert arrived an hour later, his suit wrinkled from the flight from Chicago. Their embrace was brief but genuine, shared grief temporarily bridging the distance between them. Together they lit the candle, its flame dancing in the summer breeze. "She would be starting kindergarten this fall," Jennifer said softly. The foundation's headquarters, once Jennifer's living room, had expanded to a small office suite donated by a local business owner. Maps covered the walls, colored pins marking reported sightings, ongoing searches, and volunteer distribution points across the country. What had begun as a desperate mother's mission had evolved into a professional operation with paid staff and dozens of dedicated volunteers. That afternoon, Jennifer introduced Robert to a newcomer to their cause. "This is Edward Thorne," she explained. "He worked on over 200 missing children cases during his FBI career. He's helping us pro bono." Thorne, a serious man with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair, shook Robert's hand firmly. "Your wife has built something remarkable here. I've seen many search efforts fade after the first year. This one's only growing stronger." In the conference room, Thorne outlined his analytical approach, gesturing to a panel displaying photos of 3 blonde children between 3 and 5 years old. Emily Krause, Wisconsin, 2008, Tyler Wilson, Iowa, 2009, Madison Cooper, Michigan, 2010. All disappeared from public parks during large gatherings. All had similar physical characteristics to Sarah. Robert studied the files spread across the table, noting the dates, locations, and circumstances. "You think these cases are connected?" "The pattern is too specific to ignore," Thorne replied. "Public parks, summer months, community events with large crowds, similar victim profiles." The following week, Jennifer met with Detective Ramirez, who had taken over the case after Donovan's transfer. Her frustration mounted as the detective remained unmoved by Thorne's findings. "Without physical evidence connecting these cases, we can't reallocate our limited resources, Mrs. Miller," Ramirez explained patiently. "Pattern recognition alone isn't enough to justify reopening closed cases in other jurisdictions." In his temporary Minneapolis apartment, maintained for his monthly visits, Robert reviewed the Foundation's financial statements with growing concern. The operation had expanded significantly, with nationwide flyer distribution, a 24-hour tip line, and travel expenses for following promising leads. While his new position provided better financial stability, the Foundation's expenses continued to outpace donations. Back at the Foundation, Jennifer conducted training for new volunteers, her frame thinner than before, premature gray streaking her once blonde hair. Despite the physical toll, her eyes remained determined as she addressed the group. "We always emphasize that every tip matters, no matter how small," she explained. Sarah's case received significant media attention, but many missing children don't get that spotlight. That's why we've expanded our mission to assist other families as well. Thorne and Jennifer spent countless evenings mapping state jurisdictions, identifying communication gaps between police departments that might have prevented connections between the cases. This is where cases fall through the cracks, Thorne explained, highlighting boundary areas on their map. County A doesn't talk to County B, and State X doesn't share database information with State Y unless specifically requested. During their weekly video conference, Robert shared news about corporate support. The company agreed to make an annual donation to the foundation, but they're asking about measurable outcomes. How many successful recoveries, reunifications, that sort of thing. Late one night, Jennifer reviewed photographs from public events at the parks where the 4 disappearances occurred. A disturbing detail emerged. In each case, witnesses had reported seeing a solitary man photographing children prior to the incidents, though none had been identified. Thorne began constructing a possible suspect profile. Middle-aged male, likely employed in a position allowing access to children or parks, detailed knowledge of locations, meticulous planning abilities. After midnight, Jennifer fell asleep atop scattered documents, her phone ringing persistently beside her. She finally answered the unknown number, hearing only breathing for several seconds before the call disconnected. Too exhausted to be properly frightened, she made a note to report it to Thorne in the morning. The next morning, Jennifer found a brown envelope with no return address at the foundation's door. Inside was a printed page with a single disturbing sentence: "Look for Harold Weber. He knows about girls with special marks." And a grainy photo of a middle-aged man in a park uniform observing children from a distance, a professional camera in his hands. Jennifer stared at the name on the printed page, her pulse quickening. Harold Weber. The mysterious tip seemed too specific to ignore, especially with the accompanying photo showing a park employee watching children with unsettling intensity. She immediately called Thorne, who arrived at the foundation office within 30 minutes. "Let's start with basic verification," Thorne said, already typing the name into multiple databases. "We need to confirm this person exists and establish any connection to our cases." By mid-morning, Thorne had compiled a preliminary profile. Harold Weber, 62 years old, worked for the Minnesota State Park System for 22 years before retiring in October 2011, just 3 months after Sarah disappeared. Jennifer leaned closer to examine Weber's employee ID photo on Thorne's laptop screen, a balding man with small, attentive eyes and thin lips, matching the grainy image from the anonymous tip. Where is he now? Records show he relocated to Wisconsin shortly after retirement. "A small town called Hayward," Thorne replied, pulling up a map. "Very remote area, primarily vacation homes and fishing cabins." Armed with this information, Jennifer requested an urgent meeting with Detective Ramirez, bringing their findings and the anonymous tip. The detective's response was predictably cautious. An anonymous tip and a retired employee who moved away? Ramirez sighed, adjusting his glasses. "I understand your urgency, Mrs. Miller, but this isn't enough to justify reopening an investigation or obtaining warrants." "He was working at Fort Snelling the day Sarah disappeared," Jennifer insisted, her frustration mounting. "And he retired suddenly just weeks later." "Many people retire and relocate. It's not evidence of criminal activity," Ramirez replied gently. "If you can bring me something more substantial, I'll gladly pursue it." That evening, Jennifer briefed Robert via video call from his Chicago apartment. His expression shifted between hope and caution. "It sounds promising, Jen, but don't get ahead of yourself," he warned. "We've had promising leads before that led nowhere. Let Thorne verify more details first." "I can't just wait for official channels," Jennifer replied. "Weber could be our first real lead in years. I'm going to Wisconsin to look into this myself." 2 days later, Jennifer and Thorne drove across the Minnesota-Wisconsin border in a rented Subaru, the GPS directing them toward Hayward. Coffee cups and documents littered the back seat as they discussed strategy. Observation only, Thorne emphasized. We're not confronting him or trespassing. I still have contacts who can help us gather information legally. They located Weber's residence by mid-afternoon, a wooden cabin set back from a small lake, isolated among tall pine trees. From a discreet position on a public road, Jennifer observed the property through binoculars while Thorne photographed the layout. Simple living, minimal security, Thorne noted. One vehicle, a blue Ford pickup approximately 10 years old. The following morning, they spotted Weber at the local supermarket. Jennifer's heart raced as she recognized him from the photos, older now, with deeper lines in his face, but unmistakably the same man. She approached him casually in the canned goods aisle. "Excuse me, Mr. Weber?" His reaction was immediate and alarming. Upon recognizing Jennifer, whose face had appeared in countless news stories, panic flashed across his features. He dropped several cans, creating a distraction as he hurriedly exited through a side door, abandoning his shopping cart. "That's not the reaction of an innocent man," Thorne remarked, as they watched Weber's truck speed away from the parking lot. Exhausted but energized by this confirmation of Weber's suspicious behavior, Jennifer returned to Minnesota late that night. As she approached her front door, she immediately noticed it was slightly ajar. Alert instantly heightened, she backed away and called 911. The responding officer conducted a thorough inspection of the home with Jennifer. Nothing appeared to be stolen, but her research papers and notes about Weber were scattered across the living room floor. Most disturbing was the message written in her own lipstick on the bathroom mirror. "Stop looking." "This is clearly intimidation," Jennifer told the officer, who took photographs and dusted for fingerprints. "Someone knows we're investigating." "Harold Weber, we'll increase patrols in your neighborhood," the officer promised, though his report classified the incident as a low-priority break-in with no items stolen. Over the next week, Thorne's investigation revealed that before working for the park system, Weber had been an administrative assistant at Northland Fertility Clinic, which closed in 2005 after financial irregularities were discovered. The clinic's closure wasn't just about money, Thorne explained, showing Jennifer old news articles. There were allegations of improper record-keeping and patient privacy violations, though nothing was ever proven. Creating a detailed timeline, Jennifer and Thorne mapped Weber's transfers between different state parks, finding a disturbing correlation. Each of the child disappearances they'd identified occurred within months of Weber transferring to that particular park's staff. Meanwhile, Robert leveraged his corporate connections in Chicago. "I need an unofficial favor," he told his company's head of security during a late-night call from his apartment, surrounded by old family photos. Background information on someone without going through official channels. The information Robert received confirmed their suspicions. Weber's credit records showed significant purchases from construction supply stores in the months following each disappearance, suggesting renovations to some property not listed in his official records. As their evidence mounted, Jennifer received an unexpected call from Jason Keller, the park employee who had reported seeing a man photographing children on the day Sarah disappeared. "I remembered something important about Weber," Keller said, his voice tense. "He didn't just work regular shifts at children's events. He specifically asked about children with birthmarks, said he was doing a special photography project about unique children." Keller's revelation about Weber's interest in children with birthmarks sent a chill through Jennifer's spine. This wasn't coincidence, it was predatory targeting. She immediately called Thorne to relay this critical information, her hands shaking as she dialed. "This connects directly to Sarah's heart-shaped birthmark," Jennifer said. "He was hunting for children with distinctive marks. It wasn't random." July 17, 2016 dawned clear and warm. 5 years to the day since Sarah disappeared. The headquarters of Sarah's Heart Foundation hummed with activity as Jennifer led a morning briefing with regional search coordinators. The once improvised operation now occupied professional office space, with a staff of 10 full-time employees and hundreds of volunteers nationwide. Today's memorial walk isn't just about Sarah, Jennifer explained, gesturing to the map showing operations in 23 states. It's about keeping attention on all missing children. Our network has helped recover 17 children in the past year alone. Later that morning, Jennifer sat for an interview with a national news program doing a special report on the anniversary. The camera's red light blinked on as she composed herself. Sarah would be 8 years old today, she said, maintaining remarkable composure. We imagine how her voice would sound now, what subjects she'd enjoy in school, how tall she might be. Those aren't just dreams, they're possibilities we refuse to surrender. By midday, hundreds of participants gathered at Fort Snelling Park, all wearing blue t-shirts emblazoned with the Foundation's logo, a heart with a small fingerprint at its center. The crowd formed a sea of blue against the green summer landscape. Robert, who had flown in from Chicago for the event, addressed the assembled supporters. Though they maintained separate residences, his position on the Foundation's board kept him connected to the search efforts. 5 years ago, our world shattered in this park, he began, his voice steady. But today we're not just remembering, we're recommitting. Every child deserves to be found, and we won't stop searching until they all come home. After the walk concluded, Jennifer and Robert shared a late lunch at a nearby cafe. Their first meal alone together in months. The bitterness that had characterized their separation had gradually softened into a shared purpose. The Foundation's doing incredible work, Robert acknowledged. Those 17 recoveries this year, that's 17 families who have what we're still fighting for. Jennifer nodded, momentarily allowing herself to see the man she'd fallen in love with, rather than the adversary she'd perceived during their worst moments. Your financial guidance made that possible. We couldn't have expanded without it. Their conversation was interrupted by Jennifer's phone ringing, a call from Carol Matthews, a social worker from Duluth she'd never spoken with before. Mrs. Miller, I read about the anniversary in today's paper, the woman explained. I recently worked with an adoptive family with a little girl who has a heart-shaped birthmark on her wrist. I'm probably overstepping, but I couldn't stop thinking about your daughter's case. The following morning, Jennifer and Thorne drove north to Duluth, the 3-hour journey filled with animated discussion about possibilities. A folder containing Sarah's photos and medical records sat on the console between them. Remember, this could be nothing, Thorne cautioned, though his usual professional detachment seemed strained by optimism. Children with heart-shaped birthmarks aren't common, but they exist. The meeting with the social worker quickly deflated their hopes. Records confirmed the child in question had been born 2 years after Sarah's disappearance, with hospital documentation and birth certificates verifying her identity. I'm sorry to have raised your hopes, Matthews apologized sincerely. Thorne, however, remained engaged, questioning the social worker about adoption procedures. How common are informal adoptions in remote areas, cases where proper channels might be bypassed? Matthews looked troubled. More common than people realize, especially in isolated communities. Some children are effectively gifted to relatives or friends without formal paperwork. Others are processed through private arrangements with minimal oversight. This revelation sparked a new investigative direction. Back at the Foundation, Jennifer examined data on children not properly registered in the school system, identifying numerous rural areas in Minnesota and Wisconsin where educational oversight was minimal. These regions could hide dozens of informally adopted children, she noted, marking clusters on their map. Perfect places to raise a child you don't want authorities questioning. In Chicago, Robert reviewed a detailed report on Harold Weber's properties that his corporate security contact had compiled. Among various financial records was mention of a cabin not previously identified in their investigation. There's a property in the Boundary Waters area, Robert explained during their evening video conference with Thorne. Purchased through a shell company called Northern Wildlife Photography LLC about 8 months before Sarah disappeared. Thorne immediately began cross-referencing this information with utility records. If he was holding Sarah there, we should see unusual patterns in electricity or water usage. The investigation intensified over the following weeks. Jennifer coordinated with school district officials to identify registration anomalies, while Thorne methodically tracked Weber's movements through property records, employment history, and financial transactions. On the 5th anniversary of Sarah's disappearance, while most media outlets produced brief, "still missing" updates, a dedicated investigative reporter from the Star Tribune delivered a bombshell revelation. Internal police records showed the initial investigation had overlooked a maintenance report indicating that the east parking lot security cameras hadn't failed accidentally. The cables had been deliberately cut hours before Sarah disappeared. The revelation about deliberately sabotaged security cameras transformed Jennifer's approach overnight. This wasn't just negligence, it was evidence of premeditation that had been overlooked for 5 years. "We need to decide how to use this information," Thorne advised during an emergency meeting at the Foundation headquarters. Going public could force official action, but might also alert Weber that we're closing in. Jennifer paced the room, studying the wall of maps and documents they'd accumulated. The Boundary Waters property is the key. Everything points to it. The next morning, Jennifer and Thorne spread detailed topographical maps across the conference table, surrounded by property records and satellite imagery. The cabin's location appeared as a small red dot on a remote peninsula, accessible only by water or air. Northern Wildlife Photography LLC, Jennifer read from the property records. Purchased for $86,000 cash in November 2010, 8 months before Sarah disappeared. Thorne nodded, examining utility reports he'd obtained through former law enforcement contacts. "Look at this power consumption pattern. Usage was minimal until August 2011, then suddenly tripled and maintained high levels for approximately 2 years before dropping sharply again." August 2011, Jennifer repeated softly. The month after she disappeared. This evidence, circumstantial but compelling, formed the foundation of their presentation to Detective Andrea Santos, who had recently taken over the case. Unlike her predecessors, Santos brought 20 years of experience in crimes against children and a willingness to re-examine old assumptions. "Everything you've gathered is circumstantial," Santos observed initially, reviewing their meticulously organized timeline of Weber's movements, property acquisitions, and the various child disappearances. Her professional skepticism was evident, but as she continued examining the patterns, her expression gradually shifted. "The utility usage spikes are particularly interesting," she admitted, tapping the charts. "And the shell company purchase right before the disappearance cannot be coincidental." The following morning, Santos marched confidently into the county prosecutor's office. "Have reasonable cause to believe this remote property is connected to the Miller case and potentially other disappearances," she argued, presenting the evidence dossier. "The cumulative weight of these coincidences warrants a search warrant." After 5 years of bureaucratic resistance, the system finally moved with unexpected speed. Within 48 hours, a tactical team was assembled for the expedition to the remote cabin. "The location presents significant challenges," explained the tactical commander during the preparatory briefing. "There are no roads to the property. We'll need to approach by water, maintaining stealth until we can secure the perimeter." Jennifer insisted on accompanying the search team despite numerous objections. "I've waited 5 years for this moment," she stated firmly. "I'm going, even if I have to rent my own boat." Santos reluctantly agreed, with the strict condition that Jennifer remain with the secondary team until the property was secured. At daybreak, under a sky transitioning from purple to pink, 2 boats departed from a small marina near the edge of the Boundary Waters wilderness. The lead vessel carried tactical officers in dark gear, while the second transported Jennifer, Thorne, and the forensic team. The morning mist hung over the water, shrouding their approach through the labyrinth of islands and peninsulas. After nearly an hour of slow navigation, they rounded a wooded point and saw it. a weathered wooden cabin partially hidden among tall pines on a small rise above a natural cove. The structure looked abandoned, with missing roof shingles and boards covering some windows. The tactical team approached with practiced precision, securing the perimeter before breaching the cabin's weather-worn door. After tense minutes of radio silence, the all-clear signal finally came. "Property is secure and unoccupied," crackled the announcement through Santos's radio. "Clear to bring in the secondary team." Jennifer's heart pounded as she stepped onto the dock, then followed the narrow path up to the cabin. Santos guided her and Thorne into the dusty interior, their flashlights cutting through the gloom of the boarded windows. The main room featured rustic furnishings covered in years of dust. Jennifer froze when her light illuminated a small table in the corner, child-sized, with a faded princess-patterned chair pushed neatly against it. "Check that cabinet," Santos directed a forensic technician, pointing to a locked wooden cupboard. As the team methodically examined the cabin's main floor, Thorne's flashlight caught the edge of a rug that seemed oddly positioned in the center of the room. Pulling it back revealed a trapdoor set into the floorboards. "We've got a basement," he announced, causing immediate tension among the team. Santos approached with caution, signaling two tactical officers forward as she lifted the heavy wooden door. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. The beam of her flashlight revealed a small, windowless room below. The basement space was claustrophobic and oppressive. At first glance, it appeared empty, just concrete walls and a dirt floor. Then a forensic technician switched on an ultraviolet light, sweeping it methodically across the surfaces. "Over here," she called softly. Under the UV light, previously invisible marks appeared on one wall, a series of horizontal lines at different heights, accompanied by dates that had been painted over, but still glowed faintly under the specialized light. The lowest mark, labeled September 2011, 91 centimeters, was at a height consistent with a 3-year-old child. Jennifer's legs nearly gave way beneath her. Thorne steadied her as she stared at the growth chart. Physical evidence that a child, specifically a child Sarah's size, had been kept in this underground room. The forensic specialist examining the dirt floor paused as her tool hit something solid. "I've got an anomaly here," she announced, carefully removing loose soil to reveal wooden floorboards with one section that sounded hollow when tapped. Working methodically, the team removed several boards, exposing a hidden compartment containing a metal box. Santos carefully lifted it out, placing it on a plastic evidence sheet before opening the rusted latch. Inside lay several items: photographs of children in state parks, a coded journal filled with cramped handwriting, and, most devastating of all, a small straw hat with embroidered butterflies, identical to the one Sarah had been wearing when she disappeared. Jennifer identified it immediately, her voice breaking. "It's hers. I bought it at Target 2 weeks before." She loved the butterflies. While the forensic team continued processing the scene, Jennifer's phone rang, Robert's name flashing on the screen. Her hands trembled as she answered. "Weber has been detained trying to cross into Canada at International Falls." Robert's voice came through, a mixture of shock and contained hope. "Jennifer, he wasn't alone. He had a blonde teenage girl with him that he introduced as his niece Emma, and the initial description matches what Sarah would look like now." Jennifer's knees buckled as she processed Robert's words. A teenage girl, Emma, the name from Weber's journal. The team around her blurred into background noise as Detective Santos gently guided her to sit on a nearby log. "We need to go there immediately," Jennifer managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "How certain are they that it's her?" "They're securing her now," Santos explained, already coordinating with authorities in International Falls. Border Patrol detained them during a routine check. Weber presented false identification, which triggered additional screening. The girl appears physically unharmed but is confused about the situation. Within hours, Jennifer and Thorne were speeding north, while the forensic team continued processing the cabin. Robert was flying in from Chicago, scheduled to arrive at the International Falls airport by early evening. The 3-hour drive stretched Jennifer's nerves to breaking point, every minute feeling like an eternity of possibilities and fears. Meanwhile, at the Border Patrol detention facility, Weber sat stone-faced in an interrogation room as Agent Rivera and Lieutenant Donovan conducted the initial questioning. The once ordinary-looking park employee now appeared haggard, his calculated composure cracking under the weight of capture. "Let's start with the basics," Rivera said coolly. "Why were you attempting to cross into Canada with falsified documents?" Weber's eyes narrowed. "I want a lawyer." "That's your right," Donovan acknowledged. "But the girl you call Emma is being evaluated by Child Protective Services as we speak. DNA testing has already been ordered." A flicker of panic crossed Weber's face before he regained control, saying nothing more. In a comfortable room designed for interviewing children, the teenage girl who called herself Emma sat nervously, occasionally brushing her long blonde hair away from her face. A female agent had provided her with snacks and a sketch pad to ease the tension. "Am I in trouble?" she asked, her blue eyes, identical to Jennifer's, wide with confusion. "Where's my Uncle Harold?" The specially trained interviewer maintained a reassuring smile. "You're not in trouble, Emma. We just need to ask you some questions while we sort things out with your uncle." At the center of justice, in Hennepin County, Robert and Jennifer were reunited in a small conference room adjacent to the interview wing. After years of separation, they clung to each other, momentarily unified by the overwhelming possibility that their endless search might finally be over. "She's physically healthy," Detective Santos informed them, entering with a folder. "Preliminary medical examination shows no signs of physical abuse or malnourishment. The birthmark matches exactly. Same shape, same location on the right wrist." Jennifer's fingers tightened around Robert's. Is she really our Sarah? Are you absolutely certain?" Santos nodded, opening the folder to reveal a preliminary DNA report. 99.9% match to both of you. It's definitive. This is your daughter." The scientific confirmation unleashed a torrent of emotions neither parent was prepared for. Relief and joy collided with anger, and unexpectedly fear. Their daughter was alive, but she was a stranger who believed herself to be someone else. "How do we approach her?" Robert asked, his voice unsteady. "She doesn't know us." Dr. Elaine Winters, a child psychologist specializing in trauma cases, joined them to explain the delicate situation. "Emma, and we need to call her that initially, is experiencing a profound identity crisis. She just learned that the man she considered her only living relative has been lying about her entire existence." According to what investigators had pieced together from Weber's initial processing and the evidence found at the cabin, Weber had methodically planned the abduction after becoming obsessed with Sarah's heart-shaped birthmark during previous park events. He considered it a divine sign that she was special and meant for him. "The most disturbing aspect," Santos continued, "is how he systematically reconstructed her identity. He began by telling stories about her real parents, who had died in an accident when she was 4, showing her manipulated photos of a fictional couple. Over time, Sarah's actual memories were gradually replaced by his fabricated narrative. Dr. Winters outlined a gradual approach for the first contact. Emma would meet the Millers as people connected to her past, without immediately revealing they were her biological parents. Only after establishing some level of trust would the complete truth be introduced, with intensive psychological support throughout the process. When Emma finally entered the room, she appeared smaller than her 13 years, her once bright golden curls now darker and longer. Her eyes, the same intense blue Jennifer remembered, displayed a mixture of fear and curiosity. Instinctively, she kept her right wrist covered by her long sleeve. "Hello, Emma," Jennifer managed to say, fighting the overwhelming urge to embrace her daughter. "My name is Jennifer, and this is Robert." "Did you know my parents?" Emma asked softly, repeating the fabricated story Weber had told her. "Uncle Harold said they died when I was 4 years old." "We can tell you about your past," Robert answered carefully, following the psychologist's guidance. "But we'd like to get to know you first. We understand this is all confusing and frightening. In the following weeks, while Weber awaited trial for kidnapping and multiple additional charges, a delicate process of reconnection began. Emma agreed to daily sessions with Dr. Winters and gradually longer meetings with the Millers. Small moments of unconscious recognition occasionally emerged, like when she showed immediate preference for Jennifer's apple pie, her childhood favorite, or when she instinctively completed a phrase from Goodnight Moon that Robert began reading during a visit. The most significant breakthrough came when Jennifer, with the therapist's approval, brought Mr. Hugs, Sarah's beloved teddy bear. Emma stared at the worn toy for several seconds before whispering, "He has one ear smaller than the other." "Yes," Jennifer replied, tears filling her eyes. "Because you used to chew on it when you were nervous." The girl touched the bear's ear with a confused expression. "How could I possibly know that?" 6 weeks after intensive therapy and relationship building, Dr. Winters determined that Emma was ready to learn the complete truth. In a carefully planned session with psychological support, photos of young Sarah, official documents, and DNA test results were presented to her. Emma's initial reaction was shock and denial. "This can't be true," she insisted, hugging herself protectively. "My parents died in a car accident. Uncle Harold showed me where they're buried." "Emma," Dr. Winters spoke gently, "that cemetery had headstones of people unrelated to you. Harold created an elaborate fiction to keep you from knowing your true identity." The session took an unexpected turn when Emma, confronted with the evidence of her real identity, experienced an emotional breakdown and cried between sobs. "He told me if I ever tried to remember my life before him, bad people would hurt my real family. He has accomplices who are still out there." Emma's revelation about Weber's threats sent shockwaves through the investigation team. While the teenager trembled in Dr. Winters' office, Santos immediately ordered increased security for both Emma and the Miller family. "We need to take this seriously," Santos told Jennifer and Robert in the adjacent room. Weber maintained connections with former colleagues from the Northland Fertility Clinic. The database they compiled illegally might have been shared with others who have similar interests. In the days that followed, Emma's therapy sessions intensified, focusing on integrating her two separate identities. During one particularly meaningful session, she carefully drew two distinct figures on a sheet of paper: a small girl in a blue dress labeled Sarah, and a teenager with long hair labeled Emma. "They're both me," she explained hesitantly, "but sometimes they feel like different people." Dr. Winters nodded encouragingly. "That's a perfectly natural response to what you've experienced. Your mind is working to reconcile your earliest memories with the life you've been living." Meanwhile, FBI investigators analyzed Weber's claim about accomplices, tracing his employment history back to the Northland Clinic. Agent Rivera briefed the Millers on their findings. Weber worked as an administrative assistant when the clinic was shut down for financial irregularities, she explained. "But our investigation indicates the irregularities weren't just financial. We're finding evidence of unauthorized patient data collection, specifically detailed records of children born with distinctive birthmarks or unusual physical characteristics." Jennifer and Robert focused on creating a stable environment for their daughter. They found a new apartment close to the treatment center, deliberately choosing neutral decor for her bedroom. "We want you to make it your own," Jennifer explained as she showed Emma the space. "Whatever colors or things make you comfortable." Emma ran her fingers along the simple wooden desk. "I've never been allowed to choose before. Uncle Harold, Weber, he always decided everything." One afternoon, while passing the therapy center's music room, Jennifer stopped abruptly when she heard a familiar melody. Inside, Emma sat at the piano, hesitantly playing a simple lullaby Jennifer had sung to her as a toddler. Tears slid silently down Jennifer's face as she watched through the window, witnessing muscle memory that had survived years of psychological manipulation. The investigation continued to uncover disturbing details. Forensic analysts deciphered portions of Weber's journal, revealing references to marked children and a special registry from the fertility clinic. We believe Weber used his position at the clinic to compile information on newborns with distinctive birthmarks, Rivera explained. He may have tracked these children for years before selecting his targets. Small breakthroughs in Emma's recovery appeared in unexpected moments. During a casual family dinner, Jennifer offered dessert options, including mint chocolate chip ice cream. "That was my favorite. Before," Emma said quietly, then furrowed her brow. "He never let me have it. Said I was allergic." "You used to beg for it every time we passed an ice cream shop," Robert recalled gently. During a joint therapy session 3 weeks into their reunion, Emma finally asked the question that had been haunting her. "Did you keep looking for me all this time? You never gave up?" Jennifer reached across the space between them, stopping just short of touching Emma's hand. "Not for a single day. Everything we did, the foundation, the searches, moving apart, coming back together, it was all about finding you." The following week, Robert showed Emma the Sarah's Heart Foundation headquarters, explaining how her disappearance had led to an organization that had helped dozens of other families reunite with their missing children. "Your story helped bring other children home," he explained, "even while we were still searching for you." As Emma gradually began recalling fragments of her early childhood, each memory became a precious gift for her parents. One evening, as Jennifer hummed while preparing dinner, Emma looked up suddenly. "You used to sing about little stars," she said, "when you put me to bed. That was real, wasn't it? Not something he told me." Jennifer nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The investigation into Weber's network continued to yield disturbing discoveries. Technicians recovered an ancient server from the Northland Clinic containing an unofficial database categorizing unique characteristics in newborns, birthmarks, unusual eye colors, rare genetic traits, compiled illegally over years. Weber wasn't just watching children in parks, Thorne explained during a briefing with the Millers and Detective Santos. He was systematically tracking potential targets through medical records, selecting children with distinctive marks that he believed held special meaning. As weeks turned to months, the family began addressing practical matters of reintegration, school enrollment, social reintroduction, and legal restoration of Sarah's identity while respecting her need to incorporate Emma as part of her story. The first visit to their old house marked another milestone in recovery. Emma stood hesitantly at the threshold of the bedroom that had been preserved as a shrine for years. She walked slowly around the space, instinctively reaching for the correct drawer where her favorite pajamas had once been kept. 6 months after their reunion, Jennifer announced changes to the Sarah's Heart mission. "We're expanding our focus to include support for reintegration of recovered children and their families," she explained to the Foundation's board. "Finding missing children is just the beginning of their journey home." 1 year after her return, Sarah, now comfortable using her birth name though acknowledging Emma would always be part of her, sat for her first public interview. The camera discreetly captured only her hands and the heart-shaped mark on her wrist as her serene, determined voice broke the silence. "My story isn't just about a disappearance and a reunion. It's about how identities can be stolen and reconstructed, how memories can be manipulated but never completely erased, and how the mark he saw as a sign to take me from my family ultimately became the sign that brought me back home."